Yo, what is up, guys? And today I will be showing you guys my app, Note Event. So, what this app is, it's basically like a blog type platform for um, events coming up. So, say you want to post an event or a barbecue that's going off in your house, or say you have like a concert that's coming up, then this is going to be the app for you to be able to spread the word around easily. This is my UML diagram showing all my different classes. So you can see I have main view activity, login activity, user, sign up activity, event test, check. Event text, check, strings, setup activity, sign up activity, event, date, and post activity. And you'll understand what these names, because I gave them very specific names for a reason. So going in, I have 11 classes, 5 activities. So this is when I'll actually start showing you my code. So going into Android Studio, you have different kinds of classes. Yeah, well, of course you have a variety of different classes just throughout the Java language. But with APIs provided with Android Studios, um, you're able to create what are known as activities. So activities are also extended on with XML code. So if we go onto the onCreate, you can see that there it's a layout that's attached to it, and this is a file within my project structure that shows the um, main view activity layout. As you can see, right here, it's an XML file, and that'll give its true layout. So for all your buttons, text fields, things like that. So I have 5 of those, one interface, one abstract class, and 3 custom. What I mean by custom is that since Mr. Mayo wants us to use more user design classes, I wanted to have classes made completely from scratch that weren't using APIs or anything to go along with the code. So an example of that would be event text. It's extended with strings, and this is also I use polymorphism with this class, so I'll show that as well. So and my interface is um, check. It's a small interface, but it's very important for my app. And my abstract class is data. So going on, uh, I'll just get um going with the code. I'm also going to be highlighting like different elements of my the project layout that Mr. Mayo has given us, the wrapper classes and such, so that I could just check things off one at a time as we go on, or if we pass it, then I can go along with it. So that's the class use. So class description. So like how they, and I put to be explained because it's tied with the video, so um, it'd be easier to explain. So if you look at the UML diagram, you can see how the classes link up. You can see that main activity is the main class, and how user is also a really popular class. And basically, this is where I'll start getting more in depth with my code, with like um, from here on out. So we have extends. We have event text, which extends strings. So strings is just a public class, a regular class with methods that are set to null because Firebase um, you need to have like specific variables and specific um, method names when you're implementing Firebase to your program. So you have to make sure you're careful with the names of everything. Like one of the checkoffs were meaningful variable names. We can highlight that. Um, yeah, escape out of this because it keeps auto sliding me back to it. So meaningful variable names can be highlighted. Let's just highlight that real quick. Highlight green as marked. Boom. And so there's that. And we also have, um, along with it going on, we have post activity. So this is my post data. And you can see it extends app contact activity. See, now I don't count this because this is something that's like a necessity for Android Studio apps. It's not app compact activity specifically, but that's the one I use. It's for like layouts and things like that. Because you can see we have like a lot of override methods with onCreate and things to that extent. And if I were to count that, then it wouldn't have been student design. So I want my code to actually be justifiable and my own. But I know I have to use this, but I wasn't just going to count it. I have my main activity view, like I was a main view activity. So this is where all like the magic happens, I guess you could say. We actually see the new posts, and you can see it along with that extending app compact activity. It implements check. Now check I actually do code myself. Um, it's for checking the login to check if you are logged in. It's a small method. Let me find it. Here, it's at the very bottom. So it's a small method, and it just basically goes into Firebase, goes into your database, and sees if you're logged in. And if you aren't, then you'll be prompted to either log in or set up. And right now, this is the sign up. Here, let me open up my login first because that'd be easier to go with. I thought I had it opened up already. Here, it's over here for some reason. Let me move it over. Oh no! It's in the right place. There goes that. It's in the right place. Okay, so login activity. Basically, as soon as you get in, you open it. Um, this is just like a brief rundown of all the classes. I'll get into really deep detail after I explain like the PowerPoint and things like that, so I won't have to follow guidelines because I like to be able to speak my mind and not have to follow what anything else really says. Oh yeah, although by the way, I'm eating while I'm making this, so in case you hear anything, that's why. So login activity, you go in, hit a you app, you put in your email, you put in your password, and you log in. So I tighten the button to make it so that when you log in, you hit the button and it automatically takes you to the method, checks for the text box if they're empty or not, and then logs you in. So say you can see this also implements check, and this is where check actually shines at. So with this version of check, because I use two different versions of checks, you could see the size difference of them. Let me go down all the way. So you can see in this version of check, I really don't have an else, and this one I do. So two different versions of check here, and that's why I say they're really important. So in this version of check, I make sure your account is actually created. So if you log in, I have to check if your account is set up properly. And what I mean by setup is that you choose your favorite kind of your interests, your times. You put in your name. So if it's not, Then you have to go to your setup activity, and this is where you're able to put in your name. And the reason I don't link that up with like the sign up activity is because say you use like a Google or Facebook login method, then I really don't know how to. I'm not that experienced to know how to work the API fully to where I can get your name through Facebook. So I'll just have you type it in manually, or if you like to have like a nickname or something, it'd just be easier on my part. So, excuse me. So, going in, you can also see that we have like a lot of. This is where I'm able to use um, array lists and iterators because when you go through, you get something called a here. You get something called a builder, which basically so a builder and a builder what it does it opens up a a window, and you know how you're able to check off many different boxes at a time. So basically that's what that does. And the array list, I'll show you what the variable name. So I have I selected, so is selected. I have I items, so those are the items in it. I have, and the I, you can see that each letter is different in the beginning. So I F, so I is interest. You can see F over here. F is foods. So you can see I labeled them up top. So I items, interest items, interest I checked items. So interest checked items, items that are checked. So I added a Boolean array, and then the array list integer, um, interest selected. So I selected, um, give interests, and then interest iterator. So I'll take you to one of the so here's interest right here. So it starts up the builder and it goes in, and this is run through automatically every time you click on a button. So if it is checked, then and is checked is already predefined by, so it's a listener. So it's predefined by the in checked is predefined by the listener interface. So if checked, then it'll go through and see if it was selected previously, and if it wasn't, then it's gonna mark it. So I add the items, but if it was already selected, I remove the items. So going on, you have buttons like OK, added on, dismiss, and clear all. So dismiss being you don't want to check anymore. Like you wanted to click something, but then you didn't, so you want to dismiss it. Okay being you're fine with this selection. Okay. Clear all being you just want to get rid of everything. Because I do have very long builders or lists in my project. So I just have that a couple of times, extending it out with set times, food, and then I have start setup. So I'm I take the iterators and I set them to the array list that were checked off. As you saw, give interest was being added on. And the reason I waited till down here is so I was able to wait till the user was done making all their changes. So instead of going along with the array list and going, hey, add, remove, I just chose the easier way and waited till the user hit the button to submit their setup to actually make it so that uh, each iterator is confirmed, each list is correct as to their specific checkings and markings. So it checks for the signed name, so because you of course have to have a name. So if it checks for the name, if it's not there, if it's not empty, so if it is empty, it's not going to work. But if it's not, It'll go registering. This is where I use an M progress. So M progress, basically what it does is while something's running, it'll prompt that. So here I have set the message for it and I show it, and I have a string user ID, which gets the ID of your database. Once again, I'll go into deeper detail of this, but basically it continues, and it'll add these your selections to the database, Firebase. So sign up. Going back to sign up. So if you weren't even logged in the first place, then you'll go to sign up, and sign up is really easy. You just put in your name, email, password. I didn't have I didn't have the knowledge of checking whether the email actually existed or not. But I will tell you this: it won't crash if you have the same email. What it'll do is just go in an infinite loop. So you'll eventually catch on to see that um, there is no your name is being taken, or that you should change your name. So going on, continuing, you see we have event Java, and this is where this is for posting, or I mean getting the post in the main view activity, and it's just a lot of variable specifics, like I stated earlier with my event text, but these are a little bit more precise because you see I use this dot date. I can't change the variable names. I have to leave them the same, and this, like literally the word this, comes in handy a lot because you're able to keep the same variable names. You're able to keep the same pointer across. Say like this, you have very specific names. You're able to actually um, keep them and use this add-on to distinguish between the two, and for the code to distinguish between the two. But you can see I have a description, title, and date. So when you post, you're gonna post a description, title, and date, and so that's what you're gonna get back: a description, title, and date. So data, it's another class. This is my abstract class, and I'll tell you how those all form a conjunction together to work. But in the abstract, I just have empty methods. Oh yeah, if you didn't notice, event extends data, so they're used together. But data, it just has get data, get description, set description, get title, set title. I mean, they all seem like minimal things, but they're like really important to the code, especially for Firebase, dealing with servers stuff, because they're very specific. One mistake in capital letter can cost you your code entirely. So going on to, I'll just leave it like this for ease. Going on to class interaction. So once again, to be explained. So the class interaction now. I'll also start to check off just make sure my video is still recording. So I'll also be checking off the um, things like polymorphism, interface, inheritance, interaction between class, um, and at least one interface. So these I will be checking off. So these are the ones I'll be going through right now with this. Excuse me. So I'll highlight these yellow because these aren't officially marked off yet to you guys, the viewers, but I know I have them already. So we'll just go through. So class interaction. I kind of explained the class interaction already. It's more tied in with the class description, but here's how it works. So, like I said, data is an abstract class. I need it because data specific methods are needed. So I need to set the date, get descriptions, get titles, set titles, and within my event, I extend data, um, and I have strings, have dates as variables, and I get them, set them. Actually have two constructors. I override one of the constructors for variable purposes. So uh, I obviously I just fill in the code for get the date, set the date. So we can obviously check that one off using abstract classes. I'm pretty sure that's on here. I already showed you guys here. I want abstract classes here. We could check that off, and if it's not stated properly enough, I'll still be explaining it more in detail. But and what event does is when you go into main view activity, you'll see that when you go into you go up, you go up, you go up, start from the top. So you'll see here, in starting from my variables, that you have here. Let me go up a little bit more. So you have two database references. You have Firebase auth and auth listener, recycler view. So recycler view, what that is you know how you open up an app, or you open up your email. That's a really good example. You open up your email and you see how they're each boxed in within a little box, showing like an icon of uh, the company that sent it to you, the person that sent you the email, and then it shows you like a little description and of course your subject of the email and the time. So that's what a recycler view does. It's the one that organizes each of those, and that's what I use. Intent. So intent is I actually show the layout for it. Actually, um, here is the layout. If it'll open, it's opening right now. Excuse me. Here, I guess I did a drink. That was getting a little dry. Okay. So, render issues. But, so you have the recycler view right in the beginning. Basically, what it does is, here, let me show you a preview. Bang. I don't know why it's having render issues. I know the app works because I already have it running on the side to me. But here, I'll demonstrate it for you. So this is a login, like I was saying before, and you go in, you hit the making it a little bit wacky, of course. All right, bet. So you go in here, you have your Pixel, your Google Pixel. I had to upgrade for the phone, you know. All right, there we go. So you log in, right? You have your login class. Envy.ccsd ccsd.net. I even have like precautions just in case you didn't have it. So say I try to log in without having the password. Incorrect login input. So I even have precautions against those. So you log in, it's logging in. Boom, 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 boom. So while that's logging in, oh, okay. So all right, there, boom, and you can see, you can see the posts I've been experimenting with, just random values, stuff like that. So that's what um, that's what a recycler view is, though. You see these boxes, though, each and every one of these boxes. You see how it gets gray, dark gray, light gray, and if you look closely enough, you can see like you can see how they're each separated. So those are recycler views, and So we have an intent setup. So this is an even bigger implementation of my interaction between each class. And what an intent is calling another class with buttons, or basically buttons in my situation at least, because when an action is done or a method is running, and say like my login, it wasn't set up, then you would have to uh, go out and make sure that it was actually set up. So you use the intent to open up a whole new activity, a whole new layout along with it to get it working. So string, event, text, users. So these are just simple stuff. Oh, user. So this isn't polymorphism or anything, but I'm just calling a class user. This class user, and it has a string, and I use get user. It's very helpful for databases. So you'll see that I was at the main view activity. So you'll see that user, it's set new user. I also have a bottom navigation, but that's not that important. I have a user, and what I do is I get the user setting the database, and I do the same thing for event text. So event text being right above it. Yeah, event text being right above it. So that's that. Event text dot get event title and get user. So continuing, we have the recycler view working with the recycler view. So it defines the event and lists its properties. So it defines the event, it defines the layout and sets its properties like has fixed size, and then the kind of layout it is. So it's a linear layout. That's really stuff you don't really need to know of because it's XML, not really Java, and it'll make this video longer than what it needs to be. So if mauth get current user equals null, like I said, if there is no user, then it's going to open up the login activity like it did. Started off with the login activity. This is actually the main activity, the first activity it comes to, but you didn't know that because it didn't have a user registered, so it instantly went back to login. And you can see it says else start main view. And what that does is, I'll explain it after I explain this because it's the bottom navigation view, and this is what I'm able to do with the going back and forth between the different posts. So my thing is lagging pretty hard right now, but so you have the events, and then you have the post. Here, I'll show you on my phone. Um, that I don't know why. I know it works for a fact. It works, but I guess it's just really laggy at the time. Um, yeah, the phone is just really. It's actually really laggy. As you can see, I hit the home button and it didn't want to exit out, and not even the wallpaper is working. So, being really laggy, probably because of screen recorder I have going on. So that causes issues. But I'll open up the app again if the phone will let me. If not, you've seen most of the code. That was basically my showing off of it actually working. Um, but let me just continue explaining. So yeah, it goes between the two menus. On start, so on start, it goes, and this is where Firebase actually gets implemented, and this is where event class, where I was saying how I skipped to event class to here, is actually used. It's not used like any other thing. It's not used like an intent. It's not used like a new variable. It's not used as a. It's not extending. None of that. It's used as a holder. And so what it does is it gets the variables in the event class, and it goes on Firebase and looks up the same variable names. So the names description, desc, DESC, meaning description, title, date. It looks those up and sets it into here. And you can see I have set date, set title, set description right below it. And these are actually different uh, methods I have within another class event holder, and it extends to the cycle view. So um, it's basically just getting the event text and um, the event dates and setting them. I also forgot to mention the reason that this says strings event text and event text. If we go back, you can see that event text is a class, and somehow I'm able to use these methods. If you didn't catch that, little Easter egg, I should say, is because strings. Um, I gave that as a name. I just noticed that strings is an actual class already, so I'm technically overriding an overriding class. Inception, or whatever. So I technically just made my own strings class, but thank gosh I put an S at the end, because if I didn't, that would have been detrimental. Uh, Making my class like invalid. I would have overridden so many things and used like variables like string. It would have just been crazy. But yeah, strings, event text, and I'm using This is where I actually implement polymorphism. So I'm skipping interface and going straight to polymorphism. This is where I implement polymorphism. So I have the strings class, strings, what these events set to null. I override these methods, and I put the actual strings of the event um, names in them. And with those event names, I use them for my database. These actually came in very handy, because if I say I don't want to name the event this, I have these in like two different classes, and so two or three different classes actually, and so instead of having to go in each one, changing about 3-4 variable names a piece, so that'd be around 12 variables. I could just change these on the fly real quick. And going back to main view activity, you can see that I call string class, but I make it an event text variable, set it to a new event text, and you can see right here I say event text dot get event title, overriding the method. So that is my polymorphism. We can check that off. Polymorphism implemented, and actually also we can check off the implementation factor. Um, and I'll go back to the PowerPoint and explain it. So going back to the interface, if um, you didn't catch that typo. You didn't see that. Shh, don't judge. Okay, so so if you didn't see the implementation, if you go straight above, you can see that main activity Java implements check, and here, let me just open it. No, no. Here, let me just open it to the side navigation for the win. So check, not that, that's not check. This is check. Although it's one thing, very crucial thing. Like I said, it's an interface, small interface, but it does a lot of things. And how I had two different interfaces for the login. If we scroll all the way to the bottom, not to the bottom, but to mid bottom, check user exists. And if we go to man activity and we scroll all the way to the bottom, gosh dang it, semi bottom, there, how they're different. So that's the interface. If you want to know more about it, um, basically it gets the ID that's passed in, um, and the ID being your login ID. So I set a specific ID for your login, your Gmail, and all that, and it gets that and adds a listener. And if it doesn't have a specific child, if it doesn't have the um, ID child in the database, so in the database for the setup, then you'll have to go back to um, you have to go back to the setup account. So it starts the intent setup, start activity setup. It sets it and then it finishes. So it ends this activity, goes to the next one. And in login, it basically does the same thing. Gosh dang it. It does the same thing, but a little bit more complex. So if you do have it, then if you do have if the user does exist, it'll take you into login. I mean, it'll take you to main view activity. But if it isn't, then of course it'll take you to setup, and it'll tell you that this account is not registered. So, um, going on to inheritance. Inheritance, or going back to inheritance, I should say. That also covers class interface, which I already explained. Check to login and main view, like I said already. So inheritance. So what the inheritance does is basically um, it's just extending the class onto one another. So you can see here I use that with my abstract class very clearly, my abstract data, and I use get data to set and return the data in, excuse me, check. So you can see all the methods that I have in data that were abstract are now defined in event data, and how I override the constructor, and how I use get date, turn date, set date. And I'll show you how important this is, because you can see here date, desk, and title. And if I were to go to my database, boom, boom, and I go to the database itself, I go under users, and that's their preferences. So like the iterators and array list I was talking about. These are the events that are created, and you can see. Oh, you can also see the IDs, how they correlate with one another, but how they had just random numbers on the end of them. So you can see the date I put in random numbers. I'll explain that later. That has to do with my wrapper classes, and you can see I just put random text in there and a title for it. So that's how it is. You can see the variables are exactly the same: date, desk, title, and I have it for every event like that. So keep going. Um, so that knocks off interaction between all four classes, because I have way more than four classes, and you can see that they all interact with one another, or at least one other class. and you can see the inheritance hierarchy being implemented. So that's that. So going on with the, I don't know how long this video is, but it shouldn't be too long. I'm almost done. Got polymorphism done. Special features. So before I explain the special features, I'll just get these out the way. So the wrapper classes, integer and double, are presented, I believe, in either main view or posts. It's one of the, I believe it's in post activity. Yes. Right. No, I was wrong. It should be main. Wrapper class. It should be. Excuse me. No. Oh, I'm still on main activity. Whoops. Here's post. Here's one. Here are my wrapper clauses. So I do a double post date, and so this is what I wanted to have for my date. I wanted it to be like day dot month. I mean month dot day. So of course you're not gonna post an event a year from now because that's just ridiculous. These are just for quick events, quick notifications for upcoming things, maybe a week or two ahead, and maybe even a month ahead. So all you need is the month and the day of it, and um, a double provided a quick way to do that with getting 04. Say you want to do it April 1st, so 04.01 would be a quick way to read it, quick way to implement the um, wrapper classes, quick way to implement the wrapper classes and things to that sort. And you can see I trim the value from the input for the post, and integer, I'm using an integer class to get the value of the um, add. You can see I'm getting the int value of add, and you can see add is this the double value of post date. So I'm getting the value of, I'm using the dot value of class, dot value of method with the integer wrapper class, and I'm using it to add on. You can see it then goes into spec. So int value, I have double value as well, which is a part of add, and spec is value int value. So I add that there, and that checks off the wrapper class. Boom. Green. So relational operators, at least 5. Have them all scattered through. We'll just go through class by class because I know I have them marked very well. It's not any of these, not any of these. I believe I saw one in here. I do have them clearly marked, or semi-clearly marked at the least, because now I have all these comments. Java docs is clearly defined, along with like specific comments, because I also have random folding comments. So you can see here's one kind of if, and I use an equal equal. That's one. No more in there. Login activity. Let's start from the bottom since we're closest to the bottom. I don't even know if I have all my methods open, to be honest, but there is one. going up on a Tuesday. Here's to with an or symbol, or just an or. I don't know why I said or. Maybe because there's two of the lines. And starting from the bottom already, here's 3 with a not symbol. Here's 4 with an and, a double and, just an and. I don't know why I keep being redundant with the sayings. What's after this? None of those. Going back to main activity. I know I didn't open up all of the methods, I believe. Or did I? So I have an and, or, an equal to, a not equal to, or not equal to, but just the not symbol itself. So that's 4. And my 5th one, starting from the bottom, making sure all my code is unveiled, is because I know I have a not equal to, as well. I believe it's in login. There's the or like I called out already. Here's the that doesn't seem right. And I'm only showing 3 of my activities. I'm only showing my login. I don't even have my setup on here. Here's the and there's the not. Here. Maybe if I open up my setup, if I go to my setup, I can find the last one. There is another not that I marked. And here it is, the less than symbol. I knew I had all of them. So that's 5. Of course, you guys saw more than enough if-else statements. But I'll point them out real quick just in case. But we can mark those off. Along with while loops, I'll mark those off all together. But I'll show you them real quick. Here's we're able to use, yeah. Okay. So for loop, bam, right there. Another for loop, bam. If else, I mean, just in a row like that. More, if else, I mean, I don't even have to explain myself anymore. Still going on. Array list, we saw that. So going down, these are just quick bam, bam, bam knockoffs. So if you scroll up, you can see I have more than enough iterators in array list being applied. I could show you their use. Here's the array list being added, and then the array list being traversed through the iterator. Like I said, the iterator is defined down here. So here's the iterator, and I use a while loop, so that's even more loops. But I use a while loop for iterator.hasNext, to go through and add each interest. So if you check the database, you can see each interest: food 1, food 2, food 3, interest 1, interest 2, name, pick, time, blah blah. So there's that. So that's my iterator. And I also have the logic at key points as a part of my documentation. Um, Animation or graphical interface, I definitely showed that once I first started up the app. And Java docs, you saw that all throughout the program. So now that that's done, I I don't know how long this video has been. Pretty sure it's been almost 45 minutes, so I'm gonna try to wrap this up quickly. So special features, the UI, APIs, and Firebase. So Firebase being node event, I showed you guys this plenty of times how it works. APIs. So Firebase meaning being the main API. Um, the extends app comp activity being another crucial excuse me API. As well as UI. So here's a login activity, one of my cleanest UIs. Boom, 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 boom. So yeah, the UI created. It took me a while to use. I went through a number of different UI softwares. I've used Sketch, Adobe XD, Vector, and Illustrator. So also, if you have questions, leave them down below. Please be feel free to ask me anything about the project you didn't understand or would like to know, or if you would like me to make other videos on the project, please let me know. I've done all the tutorials, like Unreal tutorials, so just let me know. Conclusion: the code did provide me with a different experience, and I'll say this without spending too much time on ranting or anything. Android Studio, once I learned how to use it, um, I wouldn't say great software, but good software. If I had to choose between Apple or Android, Apple's will win. But if I had to choose between those two or another one, these both would lose because there's this thing called Ionic, or there's this thing called hybrid apps. And what hybrid apps can do, they can run on any platform, or if you make a truly hybrid app, it can run on any platform. So I'm talking about phones, both Android, iOS, Windows, Mac, Linux, you name it. Greens, beans, tomatoes, ham, lamb, you name it. And um, with that being said, hybrid apps, much cleaner to code. You're able to do better animations, because one thing I did have a struggle with was animation and a struggle with implementing APIs. But with hybrid apps, you're basically coding a website and making it native with native features. So it's like Bootstrap plus, in a sense, where you have a website, you convert it to fit mobile, and you slap some more stuff on it, but it makes it look much, 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 much more clean. Firebase, very great tool. Learn how to use it a lot. UI, especially with login, in terms of login UI, I learned a whole bunch on how to design it, what what people want to see, what makes it look the cleanest, as well as logo design, simplicity, and how it can work along with your app. And if I were to say any things, I mean, Java is an okay language, not the best object-oriented programming language out there. Of course, Objective C is. That's why it's being used by like Visual Studio, Swift, things like that. And so that's all I really have to say. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to leave a comment on anything you want to know. And peace.